The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine gardens of Kensington Palace, as 5-year-old Prince Louis pressed his small face against the tall windows of his nursery. His breath fogged the glass as he watched the palace guards march in their perfectly timed formations below. Each guard wore the traditional red uniform with the distinctive black bearskin hat, their movements precise and unwavering. Louis had always been fascinated by these men who protected his family. Unlike his older siblings, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, who had grown accustomed to the constant presence of security, Louis remained captivated by every detail of palace life. He would spend hours observing the guards, learning their routines, and wondering what thoughts occupied their minds during those long, silent hours of duty. On this particular morning, something felt different. The young prince had overheard hushed conversations between his parents, Prince William and Princess Catherine, about increased security measures. There had been whispered mentions of potential threats and the need for extra vigilance. While the details remained beyond his understanding, Louis sensed the tension that had settled over the palace like an invisible blanket. His nanny, Maria, had been stricter than usual about keeping him indoors. The freedom he once enjoyed to explore the palace gardens had been curtailed, and his outdoor playtime was now limited to a small, heavily monitored area close to the main building. For a spirited child like Louis, these restrictions felt suffocating. As he watched from his window, Louis noticed something peculiar about one of the guards stationed near the main entrance. The man seemed different from the others, his posture slightly less rigid, his eyes moving in patterns that didn't match the trained discipline of the regular palace guard. While the other guards maintained their stoic expressions and fixed gazes, this particular guard appeared to be scanning the area with unusual interest. The guard's name was James Morrison, though Louis didn't know this at the time. Morrison was a recent addition to the palace security team, having been transferred from a different royal residence just 2 weeks prior. His credentials were impeccable, his background check thorough, and his recommendations glowing. However, what the palace security department didn't know was that Morrison had been carefully selected and placed by individuals with their own agenda. Louis continued his observation, unaware that he was witnessing the early stages of what would become a significant security breach. The young prince had always possessed an unusual ability to notice details that others missed. Perhaps it was the innocence of childhood that allowed him to see beyond the surface, or maybe it was simply the keen awareness that comes naturally to some children. Throughout the day, Louis found himself repeatedly drawn to the window. During his morning lessons with his tutor, he would glance toward the glass whenever possible. At lunch, he chose a seat that gave him the best view of the courtyard. Even during his afternoon rest time, he positioned himself where he could maintain his vigil. What Louis observed troubled him, though he couldn't articulate why. The guard who had caught his attention seemed to be communicating with someone beyond the palace walls. It wasn't obvious communication, nothing that would alert the other security personnel. Instead, it appeared to be a series of subtle gestures and movements that could easily be dismissed as routine adjustments of posture or equipment. Morrison would occasionally touch his earpiece in a pattern that seemed deliberate, or adjust his position in ways that differed from standard protocol. To trained eyes, these might have appeared as minor deviations from procedure. To Louis, however, they formed a pattern that felt intentionally secretive. The young prince had grown up surrounded by security protocols. He understood, even at his age, that certain behaviors were expected from the guards and that deviations from these patterns were unusual. His observations of palace life had taught him to recognize the normal rhythms and routines that governed their protected world. As the afternoon progressed, Louis became increasingly convinced that something was wrong. The guards' behavior continued to strike him as suspicious, and his concern grew with each passing hour. He considered telling his parents, but knew they were occupied with important meetings and might dismiss his observations as childish imagination. The dilemma weighed heavily on the young prince's mind. He had been taught the importance of speaking up when something seemed wrong, but he had also learned not to interrupt adults with trivial concerns. The challenge was determining whether his observations warranted immediate attention or could wait for a more appropriate moment. Meanwhile, Morrison continued his careful reconnaissance, unaware that he was being watched by the sharp eyes of a 5-year-old prince. His mission was to gather intelligence about the palace's internal security measures, information that would be valuable to those who had placed him in his position. He believed his subtle methods of communication were undetectable, designed to avoid the sophisticated surveillance systems that monitored the palace grounds. The irony was that while Morrison successfully evaded the electronic security measures, he had failed to account for the most basic form of surveillance, the curious observation of a child. Lewis's untrained but intuitive assessment of the situation was proving more effective than the advanced security protocols designed to protect the royal family. As evening approached, Lewis made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events with far-reaching consequences. He could no longer ignore what he had observed, and despite his young age, he understood that the safety of his family might depend on his actions. The weight of this responsibility felt enormous for such a small child, but his instincts told him that waiting was not an option. The palace buzzed with its usual evening activities, staff members preparing for the night shift, security personnel conducting their routine briefings, and the royal family settling into their evening routines. None of them were aware that a 5-year-old prince had spent the day uncovering what could potentially be a serious security threat. Louis knew that whatever he decided to do next would need to be carefully considered. He couldn't simply run to the nearest adult with his concerns, as his observations might be dismissed or misunderstood. Instead, he needed to find a way to communicate his suspicions that would be taken seriously while ensuring that any real threat was properly addressed. The stage was set for a confrontation between innocent observation and calculated deception, with the security of the royal family hanging in the balance. The dinner hour at Kensington Palace was typically a time of family togetherness, when the formal protocols of the day gave way to more relaxed conversation. Prince William and Princess Catherine made it a priority to share at least one meal each day with their children, creating moments of normalcy within their extraordinary lives. However, on this particular evening, Louis found it difficult to focus on the usual dinner conversations. His mind kept returning to the suspicious behavior he had witnessed throughout the day. While George enthusiastically recounted his mathematics lesson, and Charlotte shared stories from her art class, Louis remained unusually quiet, picking at his food and occasionally glancing toward the windows that overlooked the palace grounds. Princess Catherine noticed her youngest son's distracted demeanor. As a mother, she had developed an acute sensitivity to changes in her children's behavior, particularly when they seemed troubled or preoccupied. She observed Louis's lack of appetite and his tendency to drift away from the conversation, but decided to wait until after dinner to address her concerns privately. Prince William was engaged in discussion with George about an upcoming school project when he too noticed Louis's unusual silence. The young prince was typically the most animated of the 3 children during family meals, often entertaining everyone with his observations about palace life or his adventures with the staff. His quietness was distinctly out of character. After dinner, as the children were preparing for their evening routines, Princess Catherine gently approached Louis in his room. She found him sitting by the same window where he had spent much of the day, still watching the guards below despite the fading daylight. "Louis, darling, you seem worried about something today," she said softly, settling beside him on the window seat. "Would you like to talk about what's troubling you?" The young prince looked up at his mother, his expression serious beyond his years. He wanted desperately to share his concerns, but struggled to find the words that would adequately convey what he had observed. How could he explain his suspicions about the guard without sounding like he was simply making up stories for attention? "Mummy, there's something different about one of the guards," Louis began hesitantly. "He's not acting like the others." Princess Catherine listened carefully as Louis attempted to describe what he had noticed throughout the day. His explanation was disjointed and sometimes unclear, as might be expected from a 5-year-old trying to articulate complex observations. However, Catherine had learned to pay attention to her children's instincts, particularly when they expressed genuine concern rather than seeking attention. "Can you show me which guard you're talking about?" she asked, encouraging Louis to point out the individual who had caught his attention. Louis eagerly moved to the window and pointed toward the main entrance where Morrison was still stationed for the evening shift. "That one, Mummy. He keeps doing things that the other guards don't do. He touches his ear in a special way and moves differently." Princess Catherine studied the guard Louis had identified, but from their distance and in the dim evening light, she couldn't observe the subtle behaviors her son described. However, she had learned from experience that children often notice details that adults overlook, their observations unfiltered by preconceptions or adult assumptions. "Louis, this is very important," she said, her tone becoming more serious. "I want you to stay in your room tonight, and tomorrow I'll speak with Daddy about what you've told me. Can you promise me you won't try to investigate this yourself?" The young prince nodded solemnly, understanding from his mother's tone that his observations were being taken seriously. However, he also felt a growing sense of urgency about the situation. Something in his instincts told him that waiting until tomorrow might be too late. Meanwhile, Morrison was preparing to execute the next phase of his mission. The intelligence he had gathered throughout the day needed to be transmitted to his contacts outside the palace, and he had identified a window of opportunity during the evening shift change. His plan was carefully timed to coincide with a brief gap in the surveillance coverage that occurred during the transition between day and night security teams. What Morrison didn't realize was that his activities were being closely monitored by someone he had never considered a threat. Louis had resumed his position at the window after his conversation with his mother, driven by an instinct that told him to continue watching. Despite promising to stay in his room, he felt compelled to maintain his surveillance. As the evening progressed, Louis witnessed Morrison's most suspicious behavior yet. The guard moved to a position near a service entrance, an area that was partially concealed from the main surveillance cameras. There, he produced a small device from his pocket and began what appeared to be a covert transmission. The young prince's heart began to race as he realized he was witnessing something that posed a genuine threat to his family's safety. His child's understanding of espionage and security breaches was limited, but his instincts told him that what he was seeing was dangerous and required immediate action. Louis faced a dilemma that would challenge even an adult. His mother had asked him to wait until tomorrow, but his observation suggested that immediate intervention was necessary. The conflict between obedience to his parents and his sense of responsibility for his family's safety created enormous stress for the young boy. The palace's evening routine continued around him, with staff members conducting their usual duties and security personnel following their established protocols. None of them were aware that a critical security breach was occurring just meters away from their positions, or that their youngest royal charge was the only person who had detected the threat. Morrison completed his transmission and carefully concealed the device, believing his mission was progressing successfully. He had no idea that his every move was being observed and analyzed by a 5-year-old whose innocent curiosity had evolved into a sophisticated surveillance operation. As the night deepened, Louis found himself at the center of a situation that was far beyond his years and experience. The weight of his knowledge felt overwhelming, but his determination to protect his family gave him courage that surprised even himself. He knew that his next decision would be crucial, not just for his own sense of responsibility, but potentially for the safety of everyone he loved. The young prince began to formulate a plan that would allow him to alert the appropriate authorities without waiting for the next day. His child's logic told him that if the guard was doing something wrong, then the other guards needed to know about it immediately. The challenge was finding a way to communicate this information effectively, while ensuring that the suspicious guard didn't realize he had been discovered. Louis's natural creativity began to work on the problem, his young mind developing strategies that adults might not have considered. The innocent perspective that had allowed him to detect the threat in the first place would now need to guide him in addressing it. The palace was about to discover that their youngest resident possessed capabilities that no one had previously recognized or anticipated. The clock in Louis's room chimed 9 o'clock as the young prince made his decision. He could no longer wait for morning to alert someone about the suspicious guard's behavior. His instincts, sharpened by a day of careful observation, told him that immediate action was necessary to protect his family and the palace staff. Louis had spent the past hour developing what he considered a foolproof plan. Rather than trying to explain his complex observations to adults who might dismiss his concerns, he decided to communicate through actions that would be impossible to ignore. His child's logic reasoned that if he could somehow alert the loyal guards to Morrison's suspicious behavior, they would investigate and discover the truth for themselves. The young prince quietly opened his bedroom door and peered into the hallway. The evening shift had settled into their routines, and the corridor leading to his room was temporarily empty. Louis knew the palace layout better than most people realized. Having spent countless hours exploring every accessible area with the curiosity that came naturally to him, his plan required reaching a specific location where he could observe Morrison's position while remaining close enough to the main guard station to quickly alert the security personnel. Louis had identified a small alcove near the palace's central staircase that would provide the perfect vantage point for his mission. Moving with the stealth that only children seemed to naturally possess, Louis crept through the familiar corridors of his home. He avoided the areas where staff members typically conducted their evening duties and stayed clear of the main security checkpoints where his presence would immediately be noticed and questioned. The palace during evening hours had a different atmosphere than during the busy daytime period. The formal activities had ended, leaving behind a quieter environment where every sound seemed amplified. Louis could hear the distant murmur of conversations from the staff quarters and the rhythmic footsteps of guards conducting their patrols. As he made his way toward his chosen observation point, Louis encountered unexpected challenges that his 5-year-old planning hadn't anticipated. A housekeeping staff member appeared in one corridor, forcing him to quickly duck into a nearby room until she passed. In another area, he nearly walked into a security guard conducting an unscheduled patrol. Each near discovery heightened Louis's awareness of both the risks he was taking and the importance of his mission. The young prince was learning in real time about the complexity of covert operations and the need for adaptability when original plans encountered unexpected obstacles. Finally reaching his destination, Louis settled into the alcove that provided him with a clear view of Morrison's position near the service entrance. From this vantage point, he could also see the main guard station where several security personnel were monitoring the palace's surveillance systems and coordinating the evening security operations. What Louis observed from his new position confirmed and amplified his earlier suspicions. Morrison was indeed engaged in activities that differed significantly from standard guard protocol. The suspicious guard was using hand signals to communicate with someone beyond the palace walls. Movements so subtle that they would be nearly impossible to detect without prolonged observation. More concerning was Morrison's apparent attempt to map the blind spots in the palace's security coverage. Louis watched as the guard systematically moved through different positions, each time taking note of camera angles and surveillance coverage patterns. This behavior was clearly not part of any legitimate security procedure. The young prince realized that he was witnessing intelligence gathering of the most dangerous kind. While he didn't fully understand the implications of what he was seeing, his instincts told him that Morrison was collecting information that could be used to harm his family and the other people who lived and worked in the palace. Louis knew that his moment for action had arrived. He needed to alert the loyal guards to Morrison's suspicious behavior, but he had to do so in a way that wouldn't alert Morrison himself to the fact that he had been discovered. The young prince's plan required perfect timing and a level of courage that seemed enormous for someone his age. Taking a deep breath, Louis emerged from his hiding place and walked purposefully toward the main guard station. His heart was pounding, but his determination remained steady. He had rehearsed what he would say and how he would demonstrate what he had observed. Sergeant Davies, a veteran security officer who had been with the royal family for over 15 years, was the first to notice the young prince's approach. Davies knew all the royal children well and immediately recognized that Louis's presence in this area at this time of night was highly unusual. "Prince Louis," Sergeant Davies said quietly, kneeling to the child's eye level, "what are you doing here? You should be in your room at this hour." Louis looked directly into the sergeant's eyes, his young face displaying a seriousness that immediately caught the officer's attention. "Sergeant Davies, I need to show you something very important about one of the guards. Something that might mean danger for everyone." The gravity in the 5-year-old's voice and the mature language he used sent immediate alarm signals through Davies's experienced mind. This was not typical childhood behavior or attention-seeking. Something had genuinely frightened or concerned the young prince. "Show me what you mean, Your Highness," Davies said, his tone becoming professional while remaining gentle enough not to intimidate the child. Louis led Sergeant Davies to a position where they could observe Morrison without being easily detected. "Watch that guard by the service door," Lewis whispered, pointing carefully toward Morrison's location. "He's been doing things all day that the other guards don't do. He makes signals to someone outside and moves in patterns that seem like he's learning about our security." Sergeant Davies followed Lewis's gaze and began his own observation of Morrison. At first, he saw nothing obviously suspicious, but as he continued watching with the focused attention that the prince's warning had triggered, he began to notice the subtle behaviors that Louis had detected throughout the day. The experienced security officer's training immediately kicked in as he recognized the signs of potential espionage. Morrison's movements, when viewed with suspicion rather than routine acceptance, clearly indicated intelligence-gathering activities that posed a serious threat to the royal family's security. "Prince Louis," Sergeant Davies said quietly, his voice carrying new respect for the young boy's observational skills. "You may have just prevented something very dangerous from happening. I need you to stay right here with me while I contact the other security personnel. Can you do that?" Louis nodded solemnly, understanding that his mission was transitioning from his individual responsibility to a coordinated security response. The weight of the situation was becoming clear even to his young mind, but he felt proud that his observations had been validated by someone with the authority to take action. Sergeant Davies activated his radio and began the process of alerting the security team to a potential internal threat. However, he was careful to use coded language that wouldn't alert Morrison to the fact that his activities had been discovered. The delicate balance of maintaining surveillance while organizing a response required all of Davies's professional expertise. The palace was about to experience a security alert that would test every protocol and procedure designed to protect the royal family, all triggered by the keen observations of their youngest member. The next few minutes unfolded with the precision of a military operation as Sergeant Davies coordinated the security response to Lewis's discovery. The veteran officer used coded phrases over his radio that sounded routine to anyone listening, but conveyed urgent instructions to the security team about a potential internal threat requiring immediate but covert investigation. Lewis remained beside Sergeant Davies, watching as additional security personnel began positioning themselves around the palace grounds. Their movements appeared casual and routine to any observer, including Morrison, but Lewis could sense the underlying tension and purpose in their actions. The young prince was witnessing the professional security apparatus of the palace responding to information he had provided. Chief Security Officer Commander Sarah Mitchell received Davies's coded alert in the Central Security Command Center. Her 15 years of experience protecting the royal family had taught her to treat every potential threat with maximum seriousness. But the fact that the alert originated from observations made by Prince Louis added an unusual dimension to the situation. Commander Mitchell quickly reviewed Morrison's personnel file and recent duty assignments while coordinating the covert surveillance operation. Her team began discrete background verification procedures, cross-referencing Morrison's activities with communications intercepts and external threat assessments that had been flagged in recent weeks. What they discovered sent chills through the command center. Morrison's placement at the palace coincided with intelligence reports about increased threats against the royal family from unknown sources. His assignment had been processed through channels that, upon closer examination, showed subtle irregularities that had been overlooked during the routine approval process. Meanwhile, Morrison continued his intelligence-gathering activities, unaware that his every movement was now being monitored by multiple security personnel. His confidence in his covert methods had blinded him to the possibility that his activities had been detected by the most unexpected source imaginable. Louis watched the careful choreography of the security response with fascination and growing understanding of the seriousness of what he had uncovered. Sergeant Davies explained in whispered, age-appropriate terms what was happening and why Louis's observations had been so important. "You see, Prince Louis, sometimes dangerous people try to pretend to be good people so they can learn secrets or hurt the people we're supposed to protect," Davies explained quietly. "Your careful watching today helped us discover someone who might be pretending to be on our team when he's really working for people who want to cause harm." The young prince nodded gravely, beginning to understand that his curiosity about the guards had evolved into something much more significant than he had initially realized. The weight of responsibility he felt was balanced by pride in knowing that his actions were helping to keep his family safe. Commander Mitchell made the decision to allow Morrison to continue his activities for a short time while her team gathered additional evidence and prepared for his apprehension. This decision required careful calculation of risks versus benefits, weighing the need for comprehensive intelligence against the potential dangers of allowing a suspected spy to remain active within the palace grounds. The security team used advanced surveillance equipment to record Morrison's communications and document his intelligence-gathering methods. They tracked the signals he was transmitting and began the process of identifying his contacts outside the palace walls. What they discovered revealed a sophisticated espionage operation that went far beyond a single individual acting alone. Lewis remained at his observation post with Sergeant Davies, serving as an unofficial consultant on Morrison's behavioral patterns. The security team valued his detailed knowledge of the guard's activities throughout the day, information that helped them understand the scope and duration of the intelligence breach. Prince Louis, can you remember if this guard did anything else unusual earlier today? Davies asked, recognizing that the child's extended observation period had provided intelligence that their electronic surveillance systems had missed. Louis thought carefully before responding, his young mind organizing the day's observations with surprising clarity. He spent a lot of time looking at places where the cameras couldn't see him, and he seemed to be counting things, like he was making a list in his head of how many guards were in different places. This information provided crucial insight into Morrison's mission objectives. The security team realized they were dealing with someone conducting comprehensive reconnaissance for what could potentially be a future attack or infiltration attempt. The implications extended far beyond simple information gathering. Commander Mitchell coordinated with external security agencies, sharing intelligence about Morrison's activities and the broader espionage network that appeared to be targeting the royal family. The discovery triggered a comprehensive review of palace security protocols and personnel verification procedures. As the evidence against Morrison mounted, the time approached for his apprehension. The security team had documented sufficient proof of espionage activities to proceed with his arrest while ensuring that his contacts outside the palace would be simultaneously investigated by external agencies. Louis watched as the final phase of the operation began to unfold. Additional security personnel moved into position around Morrison's location, their approach coordinated to prevent any possibility of escape or destruction of evidence. The young prince was witnessing the culmination of a security operation that had begun with his innocent curiosity about the palace guards. The moment of confrontation arrived with sudden swiftness. Morrison, finally realizing that his activities had been discovered, attempted to flee from his position near the service entrance. However, the security team's careful positioning made escape impossible, and he was apprehended within seconds of beginning his flight attempt. During the arrest, Morrison's equipment and communications devices were secured, providing additional evidence of his espionage activities and valuable intelligence about his external contacts. The scope of the intelligence breach was more extensive than anyone had initially realized. Confirming that Louis's observations had prevented a serious security disaster, Louis observed the arrest from his safe position with Sergeant Davies, feeling a complex mix of emotions as he watched the suspicious guard being taken into custody. The young prince experienced satisfaction at having his suspicions validated, concern about the dangers his family had faced, and pride in having contributed to protecting everyone in the palace. The immediate crisis had been resolved, but its implications would continue to unfold over the coming days and weeks. Louis had inadvertently uncovered an espionage operation that required comprehensive investigation and response from multiple security agencies. His childhood curiosity had evolved into a significant contribution to national security. As the arrest was completed and Morrison was removed from the palace grounds, Sergeant Davies turned to Louis with genuine admiration for the young prince's role in detecting and reporting the threat. The security officer realized that they had all learned something important about the value of observational awareness, regardless of the observer's age or official position. The palace would never again underestimate the security contributions that could come from the most unexpected sources, and Louis had established himself as someone whose instincts and observations deserved serious consideration and respect. The aftermath of Morrison's arrest brought a flurry of activity to Kensington Palace that continued well into the early morning hours. Security personnel from various agencies arrived to conduct thorough investigations, while palace staff worked to maintain normal routines despite the extraordinary circumstances that had unfolded during the night. Prince William and Princess Catherine were awakened by Commander Mitchell and briefed on the situation their youngest son had uncovered. The initial shock of learning about the security breach was quickly followed by amazement at Louis's role in detecting and reporting the threat. As parents, they experienced a complex mix of pride in their son's alertness and concern about the dangers that had existed so close to their family. "I want to speak with Louis immediately," Prince William said after receiving the full briefing about the night's events. Despite the late hour, he needed to understand exactly what his 5-year-old son had observed and how he had managed to detect a threat that had eluded trained security professionals. Louis was brought to his parents' private sitting room, where he found both Prince William and Princess Catherine waiting with expressions that combined worry, pride, and curiosity. The young prince could sense the significance of the moment as he prepared to recount his observations and actions to his parents. "Louis, we understand you've had quite an adventure tonight," Prince William began gently. "Can you tell us everything you saw that made you think something was wrong with one of the guards?" The young prince settled into his favorite chair and began to describe his day-long observation of Morrison's suspicious behavior. As he spoke, his parents realized that their son possessed observational skills and intuitive awareness that exceeded what they had previously recognized. His detailed account of Morrison's activities demonstrated a level of attention and analytical thinking that was remarkable for someone his age. Princess Catherine listened with growing admiration as Louis explained his decision-making process, from his initial concerns about the guard's behavior to his eventual choice to seek help from Sergeant Davies. She recognized that their son had faced genuine moral and practical dilemmas throughout the day, weighing his sense of duty against instructions to remain in his room. "You showed tremendous courage and good judgment, Louis," Princess Catherine said, drawing her son close. "But I also want you to understand how dangerous the situation could have been. Promise me that if anything like this ever happens again, you'll come to Daddy or me immediately, no matter what else might be happening." Louis nodded solemnly, understanding that his parents' concern came from love and their responsibility to keep him safe. However, he also felt proud that his actions had helped protect his entire family and the many people who worked in the palace. The experience had taught him important lessons about trust, responsibility, and the value of speaking up when something seemed wrong. The investigation into Morrison's activities revealed the extent of the espionage operation that had been targeting the royal family. Intelligence agencies discovered that Morrison was part of a larger network that had been attempting to gather information about palace security procedures, family schedules, and vulnerability assessments for several months. The information Louis's vigilance had prevented from being transmitted included detailed plans of security gaps, guard rotation schedules, and potential access points that could have been used for future attacks or infiltration attempts. His observations had quite literally prevented what could have been a catastrophic security breach with potentially tragic consequences. Commander Mitchell met with the royal family the following morning to provide a comprehensive briefing on what the investigation had revealed. She made a point of acknowledging Louis's contribution to uncovering the threat and expressed the security team's gratitude for his alertness and courage. "Prince Louis, your observations and actions last night prevented something that could have put your entire family and our staff in serious danger," Commander Mitchell explained. "Professional security officers trained for years to develop the kind of observational skills you demonstrated naturally. We're all very impressed and grateful." The 5-year-old prince listened carefully to the commander's explanation, beginning to understand the full scope of what his curiosity and concern had accomplished. The weight of knowing that his actions had prevented potential harm to people he loved was both overwhelming and empowering for someone so young. News of the security breach and Louis's role in uncovering it spread quickly through the palace staff, creating an atmosphere of amazement and respect for the youngest royal family member. Staff members who had previously viewed Louis primarily as a curious and energetic child began to see him as someone with exceptional awareness and good judgment. The incident also prompted a comprehensive review of palace security protocols and personnel verification procedures. The security team implemented new measures designed to prevent similar infiltrations while also establishing procedures for responding to observations and concerns raised by any member of the royal household. Regardless of their age or position, Louis found himself in the unique position of being consulted about security matters that affected his family's safety. While the consultations were conducted in age-appropriate ways, the security team recognized that his perspective and observational abilities provided valuable insights that complemented their professional expertise. The young prince's daily routine gradually returned to normal, but with some significant changes. His parents and the security team developed new protocols that would allow him to report concerns immediately, while ensuring his safety during any future security incidents. They also established regular meetings where Louis could share his observations about palace activities with security personnel. The experience had transformed Louis from a curious child into someone with a genuine understanding of his role in his family's security and well-being. While he remained playful and energetic, there was a new maturity in his approach to observing and understanding the world around him. Prince William and Princess Catherine recognized that their youngest son had developed capabilities and awareness that needed to be nurtured and channeled appropriately. They began incorporating age-appropriate discussions about safety, observation, and responsibility into his education and daily activities. The palace staff noticed changes in how they interacted with Louis, treating him with a level of respect that acknowledged his contribution to everyone's safety. While he remained a beloved child who brought joy and laughter to palace life, there was also recognition that he possessed unique abilities that deserved serious consideration. The incident became a defining moment in Louis's young life, establishing him as someone whose observations and instincts could be trusted and valued. It also demonstrated to everyone around him that significant contributions to safety and security could come from the most unexpected sources, regardless of age or official position. As the days passed and the immediate crisis became a memory, the palace settled into new routines that incorporated the lessons learned from Louis's remarkable demonstration of vigilance and courage. The young prince had not only prevented a serious security breach, but had also changed how everyone thought about awareness, observation, and the importance of trusting one's instincts when something seemed wrong. In the weeks following Morrison's arrest, Kensington Palace underwent significant changes that reflected both enhanced security measures and a new appreciation for the observational contributions of its youngest resident. Louis found himself adapting to a routine that balanced his normal childhood activities with a newfound role as an unofficial security consultant. The investigation into Morrison's activities had revealed connections to an international espionage network that posed threats to multiple royal residences across Europe. Intelligence agencies from several countries coordinated their efforts to dismantle the network, using information gathered from Morrison's communications and equipment to identify and apprehend other operatives. Louis's parents made the decision to gradually educate him about the broader implications of what he had uncovered, while ensuring that the knowledge remained appropriate for his age and didn't create undue anxiety about his family's safety. They recognized that their son had demonstrated capabilities that needed to be acknowledged and properly channeled. "Louis, what you did was very important not just for our family, but for many other people as well," Prince William explained during one of their regular evening conversations. "The bad people that Guard was working for had plans that could have hurt people in other places too. Your careful watching helped stop all of that." The young prince absorbed this information with the seriousness it deserved, understanding that his actions had consequences extending far beyond the walls of Kensington Palace. This knowledge brought with it a sense of responsibility that was both empowering and sobering for someone his age. Commander Mitchell established weekly briefings with Louis, conducted in a child-friendly manner that allowed him to share his observations about palace activities while learning basic security awareness principles. These sessions became highlights of the young prince's week, as he felt genuinely valued for his contributions to his family's protection. During one such briefing, Louis raised concerns about new patterns he had observed in the palace's daily routines. "Commander Mitchell, I've noticed that some of the cleaning staff have been asking questions about rooms they don't usually work in," he reported with the same careful attention to detail that had characterized his observation of Morrison. The commander took Louis's observation seriously, initiating discreet inquiries into the cleaning staff's activities. While the investigation revealed nothing suspicious, the thoroughness of the response demonstrated the security team's commitment to treating all of Lewis's observations with appropriate attention and respect. Princess Catherine worked with Louis's tutors to incorporate his security experiences into his education, using his real-world observations as case studies for lessons about critical thinking, problem-solving, and civic responsibility. The young prince's unique experiences provided educational opportunities that couldn't be replicated through traditional teaching methods. Louis has learned more about observation, analysis, and decision-making from this experience than most people learn in years of formal education. His tutor, Miss Henderson, observed during a meeting with his parents. His ability to notice details and draw logical conclusions has been remarkably enhanced by the validation he received for his security contributions. The palace staff noticed changes in how Louis interacted with them, displaying increased confidence and a more mature understanding of the importance of everyone's role in maintaining security and safety. He began asking thoughtful questions about their work and responsibilities, demonstrating genuine interest in understanding how the palace operated as a protected community. Louis's siblings, Prince George and Princess Charlotte, initially struggled to understand the attention their younger brother was receiving for what appeared to them to be simply watching guards. However, as their parents explained the significance of Louis's observations and actions, they began to view their brother with new respect and admiration. "I want to learn how to notice things the way Louis does," Princess Charlotte announced during one family dinner. "Maybe I can help keep our family safe too." This response prompted Prince William and Princess Catherine to expand their children's security education, teaching all three about the importance of awareness and observation, while ensuring that the lessons remained age-appropriate and didn't create unnecessary anxiety about threats. The media eventually learned about the security incident at Kensington Palace, though the specific details of Louis's role were carefully protected to maintain both his privacy and security. The public received only general information about enhanced security measures and the successful prevention of a potential threat. However, within security and intelligence circles, the story of the 5-year-old prince who uncovered a sophisticated espionage operation became legendary. Professional security officers from around the world studied the incident as an example of how unexpected sources could provide critical intelligence that formal surveillance systems might miss. Louis's experience influenced security protocols at other royal residences and government facilities, leading to the development of programs that encouraged and facilitated the reporting of suspicious observations by all members of protected communities, regardless of their age or official status. The young prince began receiving invitations to participate in age-appropriate security awareness programs, sharing his story with other children whose families lived in high-security environments. These experiences helped him understand that his situation, while unique, was part of a broader community of people who shared similar challenges and responsibilities. As months passed, Louis's role evolved from that of an accidental hero to a recognized contributor to his family's security infrastructure. His observations continued to provide valuable intelligence, though no subsequent incidents matched the drama and significance of the Morrison case. The experience had fundamentally changed how Louis viewed his place in the world and his responsibilities to the people he loved. While he remained a playful and energetic child, there was now a depth of purpose and understanding that set him apart from other children his age. Prince William and Princess Catherine recognized that their youngest son had developed capabilities that would serve him well throughout his life, regardless of what path he eventually chose to pursue. The incident had revealed character traits and abilities that would be valuable in any future role he might assume within or outside the royal family. The palace had learned that security awareness and threat detection could come from any source, and that the most effective protection often resulted from combining professional expertise with the fresh perspectives and instincts of those who might observe situations without preconceived notions or trained assumptions. Louis's legacy from the incident extended beyond the immediate prevention of a security breach to include lasting changes in how security professionals thought about observation, reporting, and the value of maintaining open channels for intelligence from all sources within protected communities. 1 year after the Morrison incident, Prince Louis had settled into a routine that balanced the normal activities of childhood with his unique role as an informal security observer at Kensington Palace. The experience had shaped him in ways that were both visible and subtle, creating a young person who possessed unusual awareness and maturity while retaining the joy and curiosity natural to his age. The anniversary of Morrison's arrest was marked by a private ceremony in the palace where Louis was formally recognized for his contribution to royal security. Commander Mitchell presented him with a special commendation designed specifically for his unique circumstances, acknowledging his role in preventing a serious threat to the royal family and staff. "Prince Louis, your observation skills and courage have made all of us safer," Commander Mitchell said during the small ceremony attended by his immediate family and key security personnel. "You've shown us that protecting the people we care about is everyone's responsibility, and that some of the most important contributions can come from the most unexpected places." Louis accepted the recognition with the dignity that had become characteristic of his approach to serious matters, understanding that the ceremony represented more than personal achievement. It symbolized the palace's commitment to valuing security contributions from all members of their community, regardless of age or official position. The year of experience following the Morrison incident had provided Louis with numerous opportunities to apply and develop his observational skills. While no subsequent discoveries matched the drama of uncovering an espionage operation, his ongoing reports had contributed to several minor security improvements and protocol adjustments. His weekly meetings with Commander Mitchell had evolved into comprehensive discussions about security awareness, critical thinking, and the importance of maintaining vigilance without becoming paranoid or fearful. These conversations provided Louis with educational opportunities that would serve him well throughout his life, whatever path he eventually chose to pursue. Princess Catherine had worked with child psychologists to ensure that Louis's security experiences didn't create anxiety or fear about his family's safety. The assessments confirmed that the young prince had processed his experiences in healthy ways, developing confidence and purpose rather than worry or stress about potential threats. Louis has learned to see himself as someone who can contribute to solutions, rather than as someone who needs to worry about problems, Dr. Sarah Williams, the child psychologist, reported to his parents. This perspective is remarkably mature and will serve him well as he grows older and faces various challenges in life. The security protocols developed in response to Louis's discovery had been implemented at other royal residences and had influenced security practices at government facilities around the world. The incident had demonstrated the value of inclusive security awareness programs that encourage participation from all members of protected communities. Louis's story had become part of the training curriculum for new security personnel, illustrating the importance of remaining open to intelligence from unexpected sources and the dangers of dismissing observations simply because they came from someone without formal security training. As he approached his 6th birthday, Louis began to understand that his experience had prepared him for responsibilities that might continue throughout his life. Whether he eventually assumed formal royal duties or pursued other interests, his training in observation, analysis, and security awareness would remain valuable skills. The relationship between Louis and the palace security team had evolved into one of mutual respect and collaboration. Security personnel valued his unique perspective and natural observational abilities, while Louis had learned to appreciate the complexity and importance of their professional responsibilities. His siblings had also benefited from the enhanced security education that resulted from Louis's experience. Prince George and Princess Charlotte had developed their own awareness skills, creating a family culture that emphasized observation, critical thinking, and shared responsibility for safety and security. Prince William and Princess Catherine reflected on how their youngest son's experience had changed their entire family's approach to security and awareness. The incident had taught them that protection was most effective when everyone participated according to their abilities and circumstances. The palace staff had embraced the culture of inclusive security awareness that developed following Louis's discovery of Morrison's activities. Housekeeping staff, kitchen workers, maintenance personnel, and administrative employees all understood that their observations could contribute to everyone's safety and security. Louis's influence extended beyond immediate security matters to include broader lessons about the value of careful observation, critical thinking, and the courage to speak up when something seemed wrong. These principles had applications far beyond security concerns, influencing how problems were identified and addressed throughout palace operations. As the anniversary ceremony concluded, Lewis looked out at the same windows where his observation of Morrison had begun exactly 1 year earlier. The view was unchanged, but his understanding of his role and responsibilities had evolved dramatically. He had learned that being aware of his surroundings and caring about other people's safety was both a privilege and a responsibility. The young prince understood that his unique experience had prepared him for a lifetime of service, whether through formal royal duties or through the more general responsibility of being someone who paid attention to the world around him and cared enough to act when action was needed. The story of Prince Louis and his discovery of the espionage plot had become more than just an account of a security incident prevented. It had evolved into a testament to the power of curiosity, the importance of trusting one's instincts, and the potential for anyone, regardless of age or position, to make significant contributions to the safety and well-being of their community. Looking toward the future, Louis carried with him the knowledge that his observations and actions had protected people he loved and had influenced security practices that would continue to protect others for years to come. The experience had given him confidence in his ability to contribute meaningfully to important matters and had established him as someone whose insights and observations deserved serious consideration and respect. The palace continued to benefit from the culture of awareness and inclusive security that had developed following Louis's remarkable demonstration of vigilance and courage, ensuring that the lessons learned from his experience would continue to enhance everyone's safety and security for years to come.